Well, here we are. It's Friday. It's 5 o'clock. Friday Live at 5. Hello, everyone. I am back from Dubuque, and I wanted to do a watercolor version of this subject that I did on oil. I'm sorry about this. Is a terrible photo. I took it off the easel in the available light. This is the painting. This is the subject. 6th and Jackson in the Millwork District. This amazing old overhang at a loading dock that I've looked at for 2 years now and finally painted it this year. And here's a slightly earlier version. As you can see, I'm moving my position because part of the deal of painting in plein air, you have to get where cars or trucks are not going to run over you while you're working at the easel. So I love the shadows here. I love what happens here. This is a kind of a horizontal version of the same subject. And off in the background here is this, they call it the octopus. This, I think it's a sawdust collection thing and whatever. They used to do a lot of woodworking and molding and windows and that sort of thing here. I'm pretty sure that the windows and the woodwork in my house were probably done on that street. Anyway, I want to do what I did in oil in watercolor. Hi, Michael. And I want to do it with the same kind of freedom and lovely abandon and, I don't know, elan that another artist who shows up at that event, Troy Tatlock. This is Troy, a Wisconsin painter. And boy, I tell you, to my mind, he's the Van Gogh of the Midwest. He just has a different way of looking at the world. This is the, down here, this is his painting. He has a very free, abandoned approach to painting. This was my painting. I happily got third in the event. Troy got second. Ludmilla, let's see, James Hempel got first, and Ludmilla Tomova got best overall. But I want to try and address this subject with kind of the approach that the freedom that Troy approaches this subject with. So I'm going to get into the drawing of it. I think I'm going to kind of stick with the composition I had here. You can see I was a little further back. When I took this photo, I was closer up, but there was occasionally truck traffic down the street, so I had to back up a bit. But let's stick with this. So here's my key vertical. There's my key horizontal. Gonna bang those in. I think the remaining rectangle is almost a copy of that. There's this very important, and that we need to now there's in the building here, the loading dock, which comes up, should come up. Look at that, I created a tangent, which I probably was looking right at. I'm going to take it down a bit so that it doesn't create that. But what attracted me about this was all that business in there that it was just so old and broken down, and the way the light filtered through there and made these amazing kind of, patterns and stuff. So maybe I need a little bit less of this. And I'm going to darken this up so that you can see it at some point. That goes all the way across. And then we have to start doing the building. Look at this lovely shape here. That's another beautiful thing about that, is the shape that gets created in there. And it helps me, the Dupaco Credit Union building. I don't know what this is. I'm guessing that's some sort of dust collection sort of thing. I'm going to bring that thing above this. There's a slim bit of that is not where that is. So that comes up here, and this has to come there. So let's erase that because we know that's the bad line. Okay, so there's these amazing, now in here, the way the sun comes across the city there, every 3 minutes, this area in here is interesting. Look at that. Look at this. Oh, jeez. And what is that? 9, 8, that's an hour's worth of difference. I kind of like some of that. I think I'd like to include that. And then I'm going to put in those first washes. It was interesting trying to get used to working in oil after a few years of working mostly in watercolor with these subjects. But it afforded me certain advantages, but it afforded me certain disadvantages as well. And that building is above that building, which is above that building. So this has to happen here. Probably can't see the drawing too terribly well. There's some trees coming in here from the right. Which introduce an organic shape into all this geometry, which I think is of value in a situation like that. 9/10 of this, I hope, is going to get painted more than drawn. The key thing is I want to get these big shapes in. Before I start the washes. So I'm going to take out that line, which means I can put in that dust collection thingamajig. Maybe I won't take that up there. Yeah, I'm sorry about that little thing up there. That's a new inclusion from iOS 26. I don't know what it's supposed to be. I think it has something to do with AI, which I have no interest in. Below this is below that. So we have to either bring this up or this down. This comes up ahead of that. Those are the relational drawing things that I look for. And Dubuque is an interesting town in that it has residential neighborhoods that just sort of bleed into these industrial areas and all filtered into that mix are these just gorgeous old historical buildings. Now there's some sort of, there used to be a train could come in here, and that I think is a bit of a distraction. I think I didn't put it in the oil. I don't think I'm going to put it in the watercolor either. So I'm going to leave the drawing at this stage. Then I'm going to think about, we have these big dark shapes which cut across the lighter shapes. And in watercolor, we always put the light in first, the mediums next, the darks last. I think I'm going to try to let things be pretty easy, putting in the blue earth reds, yellow ochres, and then I'm going to come in with the medium values, these blue shadows, and then the dark shadows up in here. So, all right, first colors first. I'm going to need a big brush, maybe bigger than that. Big mop. Let's get it good and wet. Get all the air out of the hair. And, oops, sorry about that. Bumping my head making the earthquake. Earth reds in here, blues in there, yellow ochres in there. I'm going to put the earth reds underneath and superimpose the blues on top. So, as usual, it's going to look a lot like a tie-dyed mess. So, cerulean blue for our sky. Maybe a little bit of cobalt turquoise. Maybe a little bit of cobalt blue. I can get all through here because I need that dark will go over it. So here we go. Now I'm going to add a little bit of water and possibly a little bit of yellow ochre at this point. Oh, I probably shouldn't have got into that. Let's see. Down into the trees there, it doesn't matter. I want to paint freely like Troy would. He very much inspired me, very, very much. Okay, the earth reds. Transparent red iron oxide, burnt sienna, either one of those. Maybe a little bit of orange. There was some orange in there. I want these edges to be soft. Let's get into the orange. Looks like I need to go, oh boy, John, oh geez. In there. It's going to be a tie-dyed mess. It's going to be a tie-dyed mess. Leave some white down there. Now here, it's a little bit yellower, so I'm going to get into my yellow ochre. And also in there where the trees are. And just to underpaint this, I'm going to get into, I know it sounds crazy, but a little bit of alizarin. And this will be, so to speak, our underpainting. And we'll work from that, whatever it produces. Because when I put blues over this, that warmth underneath the warm colors underneath the cold colors is hopefully going to do some nice things. Okay, now this, it looks like those popsicles called bomb pops. So let's dry this. Go to the mute. And we're back. So, hi Jackie. Just to mention what we're using here, this is an 11 by 15 sheet of Hanamula 140 pound cold press. And I've got it taped to the edge, but not across. You can get your finger into this, so it's really only held at the four corners. All right. That's enough, the big brush. I think I'm going to get involved in the Oriental brush, or maybe a slightly smaller brush. Oh goodness, let's see what I did do. Those a little darker than the sky. They call it the octopus. So under here, I think I'm going to start this with a mix of, let me mop out these colors that I'm not really going to use. I think ultramarine blue and maybe a little bit of one of the reds, either the quinacridone rose or the cad red, just to get some heat underneath this shadow. Start with the reds. And this will not be the first. I'm going to get some heat under this dark, and then I'm going to get the dark on it. So a little bit of cobalt or ultramarine to make a sort of a red, violet, purple. Trying to paint freely like Troy does. You should definitely look this guy up. Troy Tatlock. Put some of that in here too. So I remember that side of the building was pretty much in shade. Now this is where you can, you have a little bit of free reign. Keep that edge wet. I'm going to mix up some extra. Cad red and the blues. Look for the big shapes. There's a smaller awning further down here. And like I said, I'm going to borrow some of the from here. Make it plausible. That's the only thing you have to do, is it has to look like it could actually happen. There's some windows up here. Windows down here, doors down there. Now, I've got a wet edge down here. I don't know if you can see that bead, but that gives me a bit of, what would you call it? Playtime. I'm putting more blue in. Going to be going more for these shadows. This area is wet, so I can put it in. Because that surface is wet, this paint, which is the same consistency as what I have previously put in, will just melt into the area that I'm working on. Now when I get down here, going across the street with the shadows. Let's go ahead and make the tree area back there dark as well. We'll tint that a little bit later. Now hopefully you can see sort of the shapes coming out of this. The shadows cast by those, whatever they are, dust collectors or another one of those things that, oh boy, you know, it looks complicated, but when they're like that, then you have sort of free reign to make them what you want them to be. Hi, Vicky. Vicky has been doing some very interesting stuff of late. She's a Cedar Rapids painter. They're all over the place. Okay, now down in here, I'm going to start packing in a greener blue with a little bit of red in it. So I'm using, ooh, not that much red, but some cerulean and some turquoise, because I want some separation. I'm not going to worry about that because the thing is, it's a, what would you call it? A kind of a distraction. Look at the, oh, I love turquoise. Gosh, I love cobalt turquoise. So this is fun for me because this is totally different from how I approached it in oil. It basically reverse. I would do the darks first and the lights later. Let's get some of the, whoa, that's not quite the color I want, but we will, yeah, okay, let's see. What did I do here? Yeah, I need more red in there. I think I need to add more ultramarine, maybe some burnt sienna to get a bluish dark, and start putting in some of these, melt in some of these extraneous colors here. Right at that top. Corrugated metal there. I need to wait a second to put those darks of those windows in. This is the side of the building where it turns. The loading dock here, some slim door there, door there. Goodness. All this stuff. While we're waiting for this to do what we need it to do, let's make a green by putting some Nicolazzo yellow into that blue we were using over here and start getting in these trees across the street. And let's smuggle some of that plus some cobalt turquoise to make it cooler and look further away back here towards the residential neighborhood. Now, what do I want to do? I think I want to work up here. That means maybe I'll get a slightly smaller Oriental brush. And I'm going to, oops, sorry about the earthquake again. Cobalt blue, cerulean blue, a lot of water. And let's do the octopus. It's just a tangle of crazy ducting and heaven knows what. Get the side of that van back there. Should probably be a little more shadow coming across here. Okay, now let's dry this. Okay, and we're back. Now, what do I want to do now? Well, I think I want to try and get rid of any extraneous pencil marks. And then I want to begin doing a little bit more finessing on these areas. Now the decision that I have to make, where do I want my detail? This is an important thing. When you have a light shadow situation, do you put the detail in the shadows or do you put the detail in the lights? Put it in one, put it in the other, but basically it behooves you not to put it into both. So I probably could have smuggled a little bit of green into this area because there was some weedy stuff growing in this area. I think I want to take a little bit of the blue and begin putting some detail in the background there and in this tree here. The light was blasting. We're looking more or less north to a certain extent, although the light kind of cuts across Dubuque in a diagonal fashion. That's one of the things that probably don't want to overwork. This is not reddish enough. This may not be orangish enough. Certainly not up here. So let's get a little bit of orange, cat orange, Cad red. And what we can do now is I can leave a little bit of the color that I already have there behind to sort of suggest, well, let's go a little more bolder than that. Okay. That with a little more of the cad orange and perhaps a wee bit more water. We're glazing now. Right over the shadows too. Now the building further down is a bit lighter or darker, John, geez, than the bits up here. So this I'm going to make a little bit yellower. So I'm going to put some yellow ochre into that mix and a little bit more water. And I'm going to leave bits of the original color there. Now, see, that differentiates these two things from each other and from that. The macadam of the street there somehow looked kind of ochreish or tan to me. Now, I need to start introducing some stronger darks. And I'm going to try to do that. Let's get some ultramarine blue or ultramarine or cobalt, tiny bit of burnt sienna, good go-to dark. Where do I see it? Maybe a little more burnt sienna or transparent red iron oxide. Either one will do. So we're going to start trying to address these doors and windows. Trying to paint like Troy might. I love the freedom with the way that he paints. It's just quite there's joy in it. Now, let's make a slightly darker mix of that ultramarine blue and the brown. This corrugated metal roof here, I'm going to start in on that. There's some windows in here too. Remember, your windows, the tops of your windows are going to be like that. So let's look for our strong darks. I'm going to suggest some lines that go through there made with the railroad tracks, but I'm not going to paint the railroad tracks per se. I don't want to get too detailed back here because I want this to stay forward. So I think because this is slightly dry, I can work a little more up there. And there's like a rusty something up top. little warmth in that. Same here too. There seems to be some windows or who knows what there. Rinse the brush. Now up here, this should be, that probably should have been a little whiter. I wonder if we can lift that. Let's see what happens if we grab a brush that will lift. And I have no idea where I put that thing. So I'll work on something different. Okay, so I'm going to differentiate this building from this building by making this one a wee bit darker. And let's just pull a little more into that. And let's glaze at the front of this with something cool. So I use some cerulean and some turquoise there. Now, that same mix actually would probably be pretty good for up here. Light's coming in from this side, so it's going to be a little darker on the left than on the right. Could probably use a little bit of dark in there. How about, that's still a little bit dampish. I think it's a bit too early to go in with the dark, so maybe I should just dry it. Okay, found my lifting brush. I'm gonna remove a bit of pigment in this area. I'm using water here and I'm scrubbing it with this just to get a bit of that off. And maybe we will, there we go. Yeah, look at that. Okay, I'm happy with that now. Back to this big oriental brush. I'm going to start doing my strong darks, which are going to be a mix of probably a little more ultramarine and burnt sienna, but a little more of the ultramarine up here, a little more of the burnt sienna back there. And then when we dry it, we'll be able to lift out these light struts where the light is hitting the struts, which is something when I did it in oil, I had to paint it darks first and then paint the lights in over. So, big puddle, ultramarine blue, make plenty. Maybe I'll do it with cad red and ultramarine blue. Yeah, that's the stuff. We want it almost purplish. And maybe just a bit of the burnt sienna to take the starch out of it, so to speak. Be bold. I'm going to peter it out as I get to the back in this area. I'm going to work in a little bit more of the reddish colors. Meaning the transparent red iron oxide or the cad red. Let's see. I'm going to rinse that brush and I'm going to tease this down into this area here. In other words, what I've done is I've put some water there, and this paint can now swim into that and create a soft area, which I'm going to bring out to here and here. And then I'm going to begin going back to the regular mix in here. A little more of the red iron oxide as we go back into this vicinity, just so it's not everywhere the same. Anything that's the same stays in the same plane. So if we add or change colors as we go forward into space or back into space. Hi, Shelley. We should be getting something that looks a little bit more realistic. In other words, if it was all the same color, it'd just be kind of boring. I don't know, maybe this is boring. Who knows? Let's get a look at that again. I wish I had the faculty of hyperdimensionality so that you could be more than one place at one time and then paint accordingly. We're trying to connect interesting combinations of light and shade. So there are some windows there. Well, these windows should go all the way to the top. There we go. Let's see, we're almost getting there. We're almost getting there. Let's introduce some maybe a little more red. Oh, not that much red. Oh my goodness. John, that's a powerful red, and I never seem to understand that. surface is damp, so I can introduce colors of a similar consistency and not create a blossom. If I put in something that's runnier, then I will get a blossom. But if I put in something of a similar consistency, it'll melt in. Let's tie those shadows together a bit. And I'm going to dry this, and then I'm going to make the final marks. A lot of hair dryer in this, doggone it. Okay, we're back. Now, I think I want to try and lift some of the lighter bits from these struts, which you want to put the light across the dark or the dark across the light. So that's a light across the dark. But I don't really have that one, do I? So let's do that. And what's happening here is that thicker consistency of pigment, because the ratio of it was more paint than it was water, it's pretty easy to lift it. So, and ultramarine and burnt sienna, they're good lifters. So, and we can actually add in a few more of these missing bits that that door needs to be darker. I can see that already. We could add some, oh heavens. Well, you know, what it needs actually is a few more darks in here. So let's go back to our mix of ultramarine, transparent red iron oxide, that door, that's important. So, some darks back there. This has just not stayed as dark as I would like it. That area on the loading dock. Some darker greens in here. Some darker greens in here. How about some, go to a smaller brush, and a little bit more, let's see, with just a plain clear blue and a fair bit of water on the channel stuff. What would you call them? How about something a little more burnt sienna, a little bit of water. And I can see I needed more of that same dark underneath this awning over here. Or I wouldn't call it an awning. What would it be? Okay, let's peel it and see if that tells us anything. So working backwards of what I was doing when I was addressing this in oil, with that I work from my darks to my lights. Here I work from my lights to my darks. And the lovely thing about watercolor is it sure happens a lot faster than the oil does. So thank you, Shelley. I think I could add a couple more little marks. Let's see. Let's get some of that orangey stuff. Rinse this brush good. Yeah, that building back here, I think it needs to be a little zippier. Separate it from this one. And how about that one too? Maybe a bit of that in here. And I think there needs to be a little bit of variation in this. And possibly a bit more. Yeah, I mean, it's probably good if I don't get too crazy. I think maybe I want to get a little bit of everything. Splatter my front a bit. It's a gritty area. Thank you, Vicky. Yeah, and you're right. That is exactly what drew me to this spot, was just the extreme play of the darks and the lights against one another. It was, so captivating. And it just, my gosh, what a shape, right? Put some stuff in here. And, oh boy, how about make a little bit more of the loading deck. And you notice what I'm doing here is I'm lavishing a bit more detail towards the front than I am. I'm not going to go back there, tempting as that is. I'm going to try and keep the detail towards the front of the image. So I think, yeah, for watercolor, and we only have, an hour or whatever to do it, I think this is kind of what I want. It hopefully gets the kind of feel, and ooh, I can see something. Here's something. Where's my lifting brush? And some clear water. I want to lift that one thing there. There's a little bit of a sill on those windows. Where else can we go? A little bit of light there. Maybe a little something back here. Break that hard green edge up a little bit. And I think that's it. So, freedom with the big shapes. This is a classic big shape. Big shape. Big shape. I always look for those big shapes. There's Troy. Here's another version of it. I was thinking about maybe doing it horizontal even. I do like the, whatever that is. It's white. I wonder if I can lift that out. We'll see. It's a nice accent over there. And at any rate, a little more lift over here. And I think that's it. Thank you, Michael. I do want to, you can see the progression of the changing, how the light changed from the time I started to the time I finished. The problem with it, when you're doing that, you have to, I keep seeing stuff, right? There's utility poles back here and lights and who knows what. There we go. Now, so always look for big, strong shapes. Boom, 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 like that. Oh, gosh. Isn't this silly? I keep seeing stuff. That little bit there, that was one of those things that, might have come up when I started or might have been there about the time I finished. Who knows? But look for good, strong shapes. Color, this is basically a red, yellow, blue sort of composition. Here it's a more subdued red, yellow, blue, yellow in the sense of yellow ochre, red in the sense of the siennas, blue obviously with the darks. So hopefully that you enjoyed that. I certainly enjoyed painting with all those wonderful painters up there in Dubuque. And do look up Troy Tatlock and see some of the crazy, amazing things that he's doing. I know some of you know him. So, everybody, it's a crazy world right now. Please stay safe, stay sane, and peace out.